very warm welcome to a special showing right here on Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. Today, I have with me a very illustrious guest, a man who I have tracked very carefully over, his several career stints, and as he embarks on a completely new journey with Snap, Ajit Mohan, the president of APAC for Snapchat. Many, many thanks for letting us speak with you, Ajit. It's a 4-year itch. You've moved to Snap. Many congratulations. But I need to start with asking you, why did you make the pivot from Meta to Snap at a time when, Meta had just got its act together with you at the helm? They finally got a structure which was India for India, India reporting into the headquarters and no regional mishmash. Why did you move to Snap?
I think for three reasons, Sonali. One, if you look at what's happening in the world of tech and all of the conversations that we have had, especially in the last few years about tech's impact on societies around the world, I do feel this is the moment for Snap as a company. It's a company that was created with privacy at the core of its design. The founders, Evan and Bobby, cared about introducing a proposition to the world that was focused on building a private messaging platform that connected friends who had real relationships. And I think this is the moment. And there's so much momentum for Snapchat, both in India, in Asia, and around the world. And when I had the conversation with Evan, what really struck for me was how different the company felt culturally. And both in terms of a company that was built on making sure that people's real relationships were enhanced, but at the same time also building a company that was, in our language, smart and kind and creative. And lastly, I do think there's a huge opportunity for us in the Asia-Pacific region, which is the mandate that I've signed up for. And I think this is the moment to build something big and impactful out of a platform that has a lot of momentum at the moment.
That's great, Ajit. So, a lot of questions that I have to do with the past and not really when you've taken over, just to understand the context of Snap globally and in India and their performance. So you've taken over in 2023. I'm sure you've got your job cut out for you. And there's, I think, a lot to do in the Indian market. But having said that, I think if you just look at Snap globally and its performance since its launch, it's gone through some, really big headwinds. I would say one is, your former employer, when Instagram kind of, realized that Snap was a big threat and, launched stories with this big hullabaloo, and it really took off. Even by sheer numbers today, Instagram, which was something that you honed for the Indian market, is doing quite well. And I think the pandemic, when nobody had anything to show, also impacted Snap a bit. My questions are twofold. In a very cluttered market and with established players, some of which you've yourself led, how does Snap redefine itself as the place for Gen Zs, or rather the cohort that you described, which is 15 to 34 plus? And secondly, this is an unfair question to you, but now since you're representing the company, I'd still like to ask it. Why has it taken the founders of Snapchat so long to realize that India is a dominant market?
I think, Sonali, all questions are fair in this conversation. So many things to unpack there. So I think let's zoom out. One, it's intensely competitive in the consumer tech space everywhere. It's true in India, it's true in Asia, it's true around the world. And I think if you look at Snap's journey over the last 10 years, it's not that it's grown because there's been no competition. It's grown despite intense competition everywhere. Today we have 750 million people who use Snapchat every month. So we are globally. So we are of a certain size. It's large and relevant, and therefore I think the question really to ask is, why has Snapchat become so popular, especially amongst the 13 to 34-year-olds? And I think that's an important one to call out, that the service was built where the proposition was it's a visual, fun medium for friends to engage with each other who have real relationships in their real lives. It wasn't meant to amplify viral content. It wasn't meant for strangers to connect with each other. And clearly the fact that Snapchat has gotten to 750 million people around the world show that that's a proposition that's clearly resonated with people, especially young people. When we look at the numbers, I think if you look at the 20 major economies in the world, the largest countries where we are present, Snapchat tends to have 90% of the 13 to 24-year-old in any country and 75% of the 13 to 34-year-old community. So clearly, through all of the different phases of the evolution in messaging broadly and in consumer technology companies around the world, I think we have found a proposition that clearly resonates. And for me, the reason goes to three things. One, the proposition of privacy by design. Not just that it's visual and fun, but that it fundamentally was built as a private messaging medium, clearly resonates, and never more so than at this moment. I think given all the conversation that we have seen and the impact of media and social media specifically, I think people understand what it means to have a company where it's not just private by design. It's not just that you're trying to meet what the regulators tell you to. You've built the company on the values of privacy. I think the second is that a lot of the choices that the company has made, it opens to a camera, not feed. Nothing goes viral that is not moderated. All of that has fundamentally made the platform the place where people call it as the happiest platform, right? Survey after survey points that when people are asked, what is the environment online where you feel happy, 90% call it out as Snapchat in most countries. That's not an accident. I think that's what it was built for. It was built to foster a positive, healthy environment. And thirdly, I do think, given that the origin of the company was around the camera, and a lot of the amazing work that was done around lenses on the camera, as a company, we have built AR capabilities that are not just fun for consumers, but it's distinctive. People around the world, younger people, get it. And increasingly, it's a proposition that businesses are embracing as well. So zooming out, lots of competition, including in India. But I think we have done well despite that competition, because I think there's a proposition that's quite distinctive. I think to your question on India, we announced last week that there are 200 million Snapchatters in India. I don't think we would have gotten to that number if the company did not realize the importance of India and how special the country is to the global tech ecosystem. What is really exciting is that India has embraced Snapchat. We set up the operations in India for the first time in April 2019. That's 4 years ago. And all of this growth of 0 to 200 million has largely happened in the last 3-4 years, which means not just that we get India, but also that India gets Snapchat.
Right. As usual, you have a way with words. Ajit, I asked you pointed questions, but I want to just zoom back on that in terms of, I understand the fact that, they've done well for themselves, 750 million globally. I would say they could have done better, given that it's been a 10-year run. I'm talking about global figures. India, the focus has come in much later. But now that you're at the helm, and now we see some commitment to the Indian market, right? Otherwise, we didn't really have a CEO or an India head or an Asia Pacific head with the expertise that you have that's going to focus and bring some momentum to Snap. Having said that, you know the market better than anybody else, right? Especially in the tech space. So if I ask you, and I'm not that cohort, 15 to 34. So it's tough for me to understand, what's getting the Gen Z and whatever else, you want to define them as. Getting with it. My question is, with Instagram and other such, competitive players, you have Snap. Snap is, of course, got an advantage that it's only for the young. How are you going to seduce that very fickle target group to get on and engage more with you?
Yeah,
that would need more advertising on board.
I think it's a great question, Sonali, and I think when I look at sort of all the momentum that's happened in the last 3 years, I think India understands the proposition, and it's largely around three things. One, the fact that the platform is built around private messaging, right? It's meant to be a platform where right from the start, the principle of data minimization applied.
But do you think the young care?
I think they do.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not only they do, I think the fact that we have grown so much in such a short period of time, I think it does mean that they intuitively understand. They may not think of it as data minimization, like the way the company thinks about it, right? We try and collect as little data as possible. Messages are meant to be deleted. So I'm not sure whether they're thinking about it the same way, but I think they instinctively understand that this is a more private medium. And I think they've been very quick to embrace a lot of the amazing work that we do in AR. It shows up as lenses on the camera, and that's distinctive.
But this can't be replicated by any of your peers?
I think the fact that we have gotten to 200 million in the face of a market that has seen extraordinary competition from both global tech companies as well as a lot of great innovative Indian startups means that we have created something distinctive. So I think to your question, my agenda is really to ensure that we continue to make people in India aware of that proposition, especially at a moment when there's concern about the impact of many other alternatives, that they understand why we're different and why we built it to be different. And then second, of course, is to now build up a team in India, starting with the leader for India. It's for the first time that we are hiring a managing director for India. We are investing in building teams that will focus on growth, on partnerships, on creators, and of course in building a business around the scale that we already have. And I think thirdly is to make sure that with some of the innovation that we are doing in AR around the world, and it's pretty clear, Sonali, that we are in many ways the AR leader in the world. I think there are fundamental capabilities that have been built here for the last 8-9 years and against which we continue to do very fundamental investments in science and research. I think there's an opportunity to take that proposition out to both consumers and businesses in India. For example, the work that we rolled out a few weeks ago, where we have rolled out AR for enterprises, where we are making it easy for e-commerce companies to use the AR technology to make it easier for consumers to try out apparel or fashion or shoes. And that technology is pretty cutting edge. I think we are at the frontiers.
Okay.
And if you look at the evolution of e-commerce around the world and in India, where in the beginning there was a lot of focus on just making things available online, and then we made it easier for things to be discovered. A lot of the innovation in India in the last couple of years has been on the speed of delivery. I think there's an opportunity for many of those e-commerce companies to look at our AR technologies and make it easier for people sitting at home to try out things, right? So it's not just, do these products look good?
Sure.
Do they look good on me, right? And that's exciting. So I think that's the third space where I think there is innovation that we have invested in that is now coming out and starting to roll out to the market. And I see an amazing opportunity for us to work with partners here to fundamentally transform e-commerce.
I have to ask you a generic question, which may not be, in particular about this interview or your role at Snap, and really about tech companies, global tech companies that are looking to get their share and salivating at the Indian population, right? Why does it take them so long to understand the importance of ensuring that leadership is appointed and the country is given its due in terms of its reporting structure? I ask this because we've seen this time and time again, whether it be Twitter or it be, Meta before you took over, or it be Snap until you've taken over and are giving it its due. Why is it that at initial look, the country is essentially given step treatment, and then after a bit, and more seasoned professionals from the country have to then advise people who are completely clueless about the market, saying this is not how you approach it?
I would not frame it that way, Sonali. I mean, you clearly have a view on this. I think I would say a couple of things. One, if you look at what's happened in the last 10 years and the last 5 years in particular, I think the country has gone through a massive transformation, an economic transformation, but digital in particular has been at the heart of it, right? I think you and I have spoken about it for the last few years. The number of people who have come online in a very short period of time, 800 million and counting, that happened in a very short period of time, right? I mean, I think with the rollout of 4G, Jio first, and then Airtel and the other companies, there was so much innovation in that space. It allowed a very large number of people to come online through affordable access to the internet. I think what then followed, and in many ways, as much as the pandemic came with enormous cost to us, people around the country on the health front, so much disruption and loss in human lives, it did accelerate a more digital way of living. It allowed a lot of companies, including startups in India, to introduce propositions that were embraced by people. So it was first sort of just the access to the internet, and then the explosion that we have seen in terms of new categories, new products, new services, not all of which have come from global tech companies. So much of that innovation has come from inside India with Indian startups. I think it's been so much change in such a short period of time. I do think the world is recognized and is recognizing how important India is going to be, not just in terms of the size of the economy, but even in terms of the fact that a lot of the innovation and digital, now that we have that foundation in terms of massive scale and access, so much of the innovation that we have seen in the last few years, if we look ahead at the next 10 years, that the opportunity is not just for tech, for global tech companies to build thriving businesses here, but for Indian businesses to scale and go global as well.
Of course, no doubt about it. Having said that, 200 million is no mean feat. How are you talking to advertisers? What is it? You gave me an example about how e-com, players are looking at Snapchat. But what are the other avenues for businesses to look at Snapchat as a potential place to be?
Yeah, our main business model is around ads. We have a subscription service, Snapchat Plus, where people get to experience features that are not generally available, but the core business model continues to be around ads. And I think we are at the moment in India, Sonali, where we now have the scale, right? It's 200 million and continuing to grow really fast. There's a lot of momentum. I think to our earlier conversation, people have understood the proposition. But I think there are two things that we have to address. One, almost all of the energy from the company side has been on building the platform and making sure that users have understood the proposition, and that's happening clearly. We haven't invested enough in building the business around it. So a lot of my effort in building the India team, including a leader for India, is to make sure that we are now focused on building a team that can help the business around the scale that we already have. I think the second one is it's true in India, it's true everywhere, is there is a gap in terms of the largeness and relevance of Snapchat in people's lives. And the extent to which marketers understand that.
Sure.
And I think you hinted at that earlier, that if our cohort is 13 to 34, it is quite possible that there are a lot of decision makers in India who are leading growth, or the CEOs of companies who are driving the marketing agenda, whose their family may be using Snapchat, but they may not be. And because our platform has always been a more private platform, sometimes there is a gap in perception in terms of understanding the largeness and relevance of it. So I think that's the second place that we have critical work to do, to make sure that marketers understand that we have a community here, the Snapchat generation, that is invariably setting the tone for popular culture. It's setting the tone for what products and categories and brands pop, and a lot of that is happening on Snapchat. And therefore, at a stage where we are, where many of these marketers are looking for the next stage of growth, I think we have the onus to tell them that a lot of the people that they're looking for are on Snapchat, and invariably are only on Snapchat. So some of the hard work some of the hard work that we have done to communicate that proposition to users, to people on the platform who have understood it, helping to build the community, I think some of that hard work now needs to happen so that businesses more broadly and marketers specifically understand that as well.
Fair point. And how are you going to translate that? Because, CMOs and CEOs and, C-suite execs are, far from this cohort, and hence understanding this play that this cohort is actually, how they play and what they're doing within that ecosystem might be hard to translate. So how are you ensuring that what's happening in that capsule with this cohort is somehow taken offline in an attempt to showcase to the decision-making guys, saying this is how it's working? Because that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Unless their kids are on it.
I think the onus is not on them to understand Snapchat. I think the onus is on us to help them understand how to leverage a platform that is clearly thriving. And I think if I look back on my 10 years in India, I think there is commonality, right? When streaming was first emerging and Hotstar was driving it, I think the same question was asked: how do we make sure that in a world where marketers are used to advertising on television, how will they understand the power of the medium on mobile? So I do think whenever something new and different comes along that doesn't fit the existing habit, the hard work has to be done by the platform that is doing the distinctive proposition. In this case, that happens to be us.
Yeah.
The fact that we have built a platform that looks different, was designed to be different, and has built a lot of affinity and loyalty amongst the younger users and young people who are on Snapchat. Invariably, when we look at the data, they invariably are not on other platforms. So I think once we tell this story and once marketers understand the story, I have conviction, like in the past, in terms of how they embrace newer platforms. I think they will do so with Snapchat as well.
My question is, how are you going to communicate to them?
I think the facts will speak for themselves. I think we haven't done that job. I think we have been so focused on making sure that we built up the community in India. And now that we've gotten to that scale and there's so much momentum, I think it's for us to take that story out and tell the story of the Snapchat generation in India. And I have conviction that if we tell the story, the facts will speak for themselves.
And how would you, assess Snap's performance in India in terms of revenue, investment, and of course, road to profitability?
I think the focus on India has been now there for a while. And obviously, I think it's that conviction that resulted in focus on investing and putting in the right approach to growing our community in India. The focus on building a business is new, and that's what we are doing now, and that's why we are building up the team in India.
And what is your vision and the task that you set out for yourself? What can we expect from Snap in India? And of course, what can we also expect from you as you've taken over?
I think, so much of our conversation was on India, but that same opportunity is there in the Asia-Pacific region as well.
Yeah.
I think when I look at the region, a lot of popular culture and a lot of innovation in technology, in driving sort of, what the world embraces is invariably coming from different parts of Asia.
Yeah.
Whether it's Korea or Japan or China or India or Southeast Asia or Australia. So I'm excited.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Ajit. As usual, I wish you only more power, luck, and hopefully Snapchat's journey in India and in Asia Pacific will get a lot more momentum and color thanks to you being at the helm.
Great to chat with you, Sonali. Thank you.